this out. Welcome to the In-Between-Man podcast. My name is Renick Morris, and today's episode, today's episode we're going to be talking about me, the who of the In-Between-Man podcast. Kind of a little bit of a background about who I am, why I want to put this podcast together, things of that nature. So let's just dive right into it and get silly. So, my name is Renick Morris, like I've mentioned to you before. I live in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. I was married at one time, now divorced to the same woman for roughly 20 years. I have 3 amazing boys, and I'm currently stuck in traffic from work traffic because I still am not a financial billionaire and probably never will be, and have no aspirations to be one. But, I'm kind of like I would consider myself a blue collar worker in a white collar world, meaning my job is to make phone calls all day and support sales executives who have more product knowledge and understanding of services and solutions that can be outsourced. And that's a mouthful. Prior to that, I was in the recruiting world for 25 years, but we are where we are. So I would consider myself just another, kind of like bozo on the bus kind of thing, doing the daily grind, doing what needs to be done in order to get through the day, providing for, my boys who are older now in more of an emotional help kind of way. But, look, I am not an expert in this area. I am a novice at best who has experienced a lot of challenges in my 54-year career, and enough that I think it warrants, and I know it warrants, a podcast to share my experience in a hopefully positive way. So this isn't about males and females relationships, although that will be a topic that we discuss about. I want to lay some groundwork on kind of how I came to wanting to put together a podcast that focuses on why men are struggling. And relationships is part of the tip of the spear, but I think there's another component that is more relevant that we will be discussing. And so to give you some perspective, I want to share with you that it was roughly 4 years ago that I made the decision to divorce my wife. And I came to that conclusion, which is not the norm, and I made the decision to do that. And it's been the single hardest thing that I have ever gone through in my entire life. And let me tell you, I've gone through a lot of challenging times. So I met this person through a mutual friend and was introduced to them and dated them for 3 years, and then we got married for roughly 17 years. And part of what I want to get across to all of you is part of the reason why I stayed so long in my marriage is because when I was 5 years old, I remember my mother grabbing me, sitting me down in the TV room that had black leather chairs in them. They were kind of like cheap plastic leather chairs, a plastic ottoman. I remember the color of the carpet. I remember the chair sitting against the wall. I remember the armoire that held books and where the TV was, and the bunny ears that made us, dial the channels in so that we could watch sports or boxing or the USA hockey team beat the Russians, like that kind of thing. But I remember very vividly this room and what happened during this conversation. And it was Not a long one, but it was profound, and I'll share with you why. My mother sat in front of me on the ottoman and proceeded to tell me that she, along with her father, she, along with my father, were no longer in love with each other. And that shortly after this conversation, my father was going to leave. And I remember as my mother is articulating this, that, she started to cry. Not hysterically cry, but just sort of weep in sadness. Because I think she knew that it was going to be a challenge. And all divorces are a challenge. And I remember looking at her vividly, and I remember looking at my dad vividly, and seeing him get sad and cry. And I remember saying this to myself at the ripe old age of 5 years old: oh my God, Renick, what did you do? I remember saying that to myself. How did you fuck this up? And then after that, I don't remember anything. I don't remember where I went. I don't remember if I went right to bed. I don't remember if my dad left. I just don't remember anything. I just remember how did you screw this thing up? And that was it. And part of the reason that I stayed so long in my marriage is because I grew up in a really it's really affluent town in Connecticut, Weston, Connecticut, and all of my friends were still married. So I was the one kid who struggled with a learning disability, who also struggled with ADD, and now I had a divorced family on top of all that. I just sort of stood out as really being different, not only from a home life perspective, but from a school perspective. I always felt like a dummy and never had the correct workbooks. I was always a grade below. In any event, we can get into more of those details later. The reason why I bring that up is because when I got married, I said to myself, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that I do not get divorced. That is not ever going to be an option that I will willingly consider and put my children through, because I just knew how hard it was, and I couldn't fathom doing that for selfish reasons. And so I'll never forget listening to a YouTube video of Pat Summerall inducting John Madden into the 1 zillion Hall of Fames that he got inducted into. And one of the things that he said was, he was really grateful that he got to do a job that he was really good at, and not too many people can say they can do that today. My hand's being raised as well. And the second one being is that he gave an example of a Herbert Spencer? I don't know if it's Herbert Spencer, but he used a quote that was really profound. And what he said was Vincent Van Peele. And the quote was, what did you do with what you were given? And that has always stuck with me. And I took that quote and said, because he had referenced the fact that we're all going to meet our maker one day if you believe in that stuff. And he referenced St. Peter and said, St. Peter's going to ask you one question when you get up to the pearly gates before he lets you into heaven, which is, what did you do with what you were given? And I couldn't reconcile having to lie to St. Peter if I didn't exhaust every possibility I could prior to actually getting a divorce. And so I spent a significant portion of my marriage going to therapists and trying to do what I could for the benefit of my family and my children to live a partnership-filled marriage. And it finally came to the day when I had been complaining about working through the same dynamic that I had been working through with my ex-wife for a decade. Like, I couldn't understand why, with all this work, we're not getting better and we're still arguing about the same topic. And it left me dumbfounded. And my friend said to me, look, Renick, it just doesn't sound like you have a partner. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I made the decision to do what I needed to do for me, which was to get out of that relationship. I couldn't be in it anymore and pretend that I was happy, because I wasn't. And the following last 4 years have been absolutely brutal. But we'll save that for another podcast or for another episode that we can talk about those dynamics. I don't want to get bogged down in those details and lose focus on what we're trying to accomplish today in this episode. So I want to take a moment and sort of step back into time to my sophomore and junior year of college. In full disclosure, my sophomore and junior year in college were interesting years, because my freshman year, I finally recognized that I had an alcohol problem, a really bad alcohol problem. I had no tools. I was self-centered to the extreme. If it wasn't nailed down, I would steal it. If I I would lie about anything. And every time I got in any trouble, alcohol always played a part in my demise. And so I told myself for my sophomore and junior year in college that if I could stay sober in a fraternity house, that was enough proof for me that I wasn't an alcoholic. And I did it. And it was miserable, let me tell you. It was absolutely miserable. And my senior year, after I passed all my exams, I ended up, drinking again, because I had no defense against it, and things just got worse. My hangover was worse. Everything that I learned in alcohol use and abuse class came true, and all of the things that I swore I wouldn't do, I did them, right? And so from a mental standpoint, I was in the toilet. I was a dumpster fire. It was just bad all the way around. I lied to the people that were the closest to me. I just alienated everyone and isolated myself with my best friend, alcohol. And my sobriety date is May 23rd, 1994. And my last real drink was the night before graduation, which was May 23rd, 1993. So what that should tell you is, at that point of being broken and as willing as the dying could be, I jumped into a 12-step program to seek help because I had nowhere else to go. But the catalyst, the catalyst of all of that came in another direction that I was never prepared for. Now, because my parents got divorced, I would see my dad maybe, I don't know, once every 6 weeks. And he belonged to a real super conservative gun club in Chappaqua, New York, called the Campfire Club of America. And he was an outdoorsman, an avid outdoorsman. And whenever I went to go visit him, we were skeet shooting, we were trap shooting, we were pistol shooting, we were target shooting, we were doing shit outside. And it was absolutely wonderful. His passion for fly fishing, I've adopted. His passion for the outdoors and sporting clays, I've adopted. And I grew up getting really good at shooting skeet and trap. And it wasn't until I came to visit him from a job that I had in Miami that I remember just as profoundly as I remember the day my parents told me that they didn't love each other anymore and that they were going to get a divorce, this scenario. And I'm going to give you some details to help, I think, further accentuate how powerful it was for me. So, just like the room, I remember the car we were driving. I remember where we were in Greenwich, Connecticut. And if you're from that area, I believe that there's still a traffic light right in front of the Metro North Railroad bridge that automobiles drive under to get out of, the main street of Greenwich, Connecticut. And I remember the light was like forever. It just felt like it was forever. And as we were sitting at the light, my dad turned down the radio. I think we had some Neil Diamond on, maybe a little Love on the Rocks. You know what I mean? Ain't no surprise. And I remember he turned down the music, and as I was looking out the window to sort of, break up the monotony of the silence in the car that we had, he looked at me and he said, Renick, about 3 months ago, I started going to AA meetings with Tony, and I've really been enjoying them a lot. And they say right around 90 days, you experience or have this sensation of flying like on a pink cloud, where everything is just rosy and perfect. You've kind of detoxed from alcohol. You have a solution that you're enjoying, and things are just good. You feel like you have a sense of purpose. And he's like, I feel that way right now. And I looked at him and I was like, wow. And I had thought about going myself, but I never had the motivation, or I never jumped in with really both feet. And he continued to keep talking for a couple minutes. He's like, I've enjoyed ice cream in a way that I've never enjoyed ice cream before, and hot fudge, But right as the light turned green, he stopped and looked at me and said, I just want you to know that I love you very, very much. And growing up with a rather conservative father, blue blood, paper salesman, conservative guy, I had been listening throughout all my, adolescent years and even before then for the I love you that I really, really felt, and I never really got there until that day. And as we started driving away, and as he continued to turn up the Neil Diamond, we both had tears streaming down our face. And it was at that moment when I got back to Miami that I was like, fuck it. If he can do it, I can do it. I'm fucking miserable. I got no friends. I'm living in Miami. I want to put a gun in my mouth. And so I started attending the Miami Heart Institute 12-step program meetings at the ripe old age of 24. And I've been going ever since. And so on May 23rd, 2025, I will have 31 years of sobriety. And what I can tell you is that I have grabbed the bull by both horns and committed to getting better because I hurt so bad. The mental anguish, the mental pain, the mental isolation, the insanity of drinking. I just wanted a way out. And the 12-step program gave it to me. And I grabbed a hold of it like a drowning person would a life raft or a life buoy or whatever you want to call it. And I have made a conscious effort through the help and guidance of other sober men to try to live a new way of life through the help of clearing up my side of the street, through the help of building a deep and close understanding of what my definition of a higher power is, and more importantly, try to live in the light and grace of my higher power. And I think what that means is that for the first time in my entire life, about a year ago, I had this deep yearning to put together a podcast like this, where I can share with other men my experience. And if you can identify with it, I couldn't be happier. But it's not a requirement, you know what I mean? And I have been compelled through the challenges that I've gone through with my divorce to fully accept the data that men today are struggling. And I want to, in the most genuine way possible, try to be a power of example in any type of personal growth for men. And I'm going to try to live that way even today by sharing how I think, I need to overcome, challenges. I'm kind of at a loss for words, to be candid with you. But I don't claim to be an expert. I don't claim to know it all. I mean, if I can just provide one additional piece of content or information that helps one person, I mean, Jesus, that is good enough for me. And in the course of doing that, if I'm afforded the opportunity to do that type of work without having to have a job, full disclosure, I'm going to want to take advantage of it. And will take advantage of it through whatever contributions anyone's willing to make on my behalf, because I believe so passionately about it. And I'm also willing to share and want to share because I've never felt closer to my understanding of my higher power when I'm helping other people with having no expectation of it being reciprocated in return. And I can't tell you how freeing that is. And so that in a nutshell is, Renick Morris. And you'll learn more as I share other personal information and other content. And as we go through this introductory phase of the who, what, where, and how of the In-Between podcast. Because if I can share this information with you now, and you can make the most educated decision for yourself on whether or not you want to be an active listener, all the better. All the better. And if I can help you do that, I want to. And in the meantime, I'll just continue to keep doing what I have been doing, which is getting in the car, going to work on a daily basis, and making these podcasts when I have an hour and 15 minutes of time in the car, because it's easier for me to do than when I'm at home, and all those things. So, I hope I have done you justice to consider listening again. And you know what's funny? And I'm going to do this on purpose, because part of me really wants to say, like and subscribe and leave a comment and all that stuff. I'm going to try a different approach, which is I don't want you to do that. I want to willingly reverse psychology you by saying, don't share this with anyone. Don't join, right? Don't give, anyone updates on anything that I'm doing, because, it is what it is, right? Let's see what happens there. And maybe it's a stupid idea, but the other component I want to be full disclosure about is I am on and will be on a lot of different social media outlets. I have a YouTube channel where I will share this information via video, and the podcast will share this information via audio. I have a TikTok channel that I use for making fun videos and promoting the podcast. I have a Substack account that I just recently started today. I have a Twitter account. You can follow me on there or not. And I am not on Facebook and Instagram. And the reason why is I just don't agree with their business practices. And that's it. So if we can do it without their help, even better. But I know I'm putting one hand behind my back because I'm not, all right, hold on, lady, because I'm not including them in my outreach. But fuck it. You know what I mean? Who needs them? That's it. That's all I'm going to share today. Stay tuned for next week's episode, where we're going to do more of a deeper dive, kind of like this one, into the what we are going to be talking about, the content that we're going to be talking about, the data that we're going to be talking about, the private Discord channel. Well, that's on a different episode, but we can talk about that as well. But basically, what it is that we're going to talk about and on why men are struggling. Because I think we don't necessarily know why, but we know that we are.